Welcome back to the Solid Verbal boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildenbrandt. Joining me, as always, over there in the heart of the Midwest, Chicago, Illinois, Dan Rubenstein, the team in your vector, Dan.
Good use of vector.
Thank you. About to have a new quarterback, Caleb Williams, presumably the number 1 overall pick. And the episode today, it is the next in a series of NFL draft shows that we've done. Sort of the college football fan's guide to the NFL draft, featuring our friend Nate Tice from Yahoo.
Yeah.
And of course, The Athletic. I'm excited.
Always excited for Nate. And I think, can I compliment Nate right at the top? And he's not on the show right now. He's not listening in, waiting to come on. I think Nate and Mays, just in terms of NFL podcasts where there are co-hosts, like we love our friend Bill Barnwell. I don't listen to a lot of NFL shows, but I think their level of enthusiasm about football, not taking themselves too seriously, and not sort of, as far as I can tell, existing in like the takey world, like I think they are the better of the best look for sports media in the podcast universe via the NFL. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Like, I think they both come across as super likable and enthusiastic, which is like bare minimum. If you're doing a podcast about sports, you should portray yourself as somebody who enjoys the sport, and hopefully we do. But when I listen to Nate and Robert Mays, that definitely comes across. Hey, sorry for the quick interruption, but it'd be incredible if you considered subscribing to the Solid Verbal YouTube channel right down below.
Love their work, love Nate's work. That's why we're bringing him back on for like the 3rd year running now to talk through just how he sees some of these college prospects, how they translate to the NFL. We reached out to our friends over at verballers.com, our supporters, of course, people across social media as well. We're going to drizzle in some of those questions towards the latter half of that interview. Also, some chicken tendo thoughts from Nate Tice, if I understand correctly, that we need to address.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is very personal to us, doing Tenders with Ty as our live show after party for a few years running now. Yeah, strong chicken tender thoughts. I'm always happy to get into that. I'll save it until the end. I'll make sure that we get in a healthy amount of college football, NFL crossover talk before we dip chicken tender term into that topic.
That was good. That was a professional segue, Dan.
You're too
if you are listening now, if you want to support what Dan and I do, the most important thing that you can do, that you can click, follow, or subscribe. Wherever it is you are consuming this show, hit follow or subscribe. It helps us out more than we could put into words. Of course, verballers.com is a Patreon where you get access to this episode ad-free, a little bit early, get access to bonus features as well. Verballers, verballers.com.
And you can also, by the way, just in terms of doing nice things, if you do a little bit of research, you can find out where Ty golfs, and he just lets people caddy for him.
Yeah,
and the more aggressive you are in finding this out, the more Ty's flattered. So
yeah, no, definitely. First round is this Friday. I'll report back.
Congratulations.
Online.
It's a big moment.
Let people know how it goes. That all being said, that long preamble, this drops for the public on April the 18th. It is the Thursday before the NFL draft. It starts a week from today. You will hear this sound many times over. It's one of our favorite sounds here on the show. We found that one somewhere on the interwebs. We use it as part of our fantasy things. They will use it many times over, announcing the future stars of tomorrow in the NFL, Dan.
Yes.
Shall we just dive in and talk draft with Nate Tice? All right, Dan, joining us now, you can find his words over at Yahoo Sports, his podcast over at The Athletic. When you've got this much wisdom, Dan, you need to spread it out across more than one media company. Nate Tice, welcome back to the show. This is like our annual rite of passage, sir, before the draft. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for the intro. Yeah, it's more just, I think one company has enough of me, and they're like, you take them. It's just like, it's the split custody where they're actually like, both parents are fighting to not have the kids. He's
in an open content marriage, Ty.
That's right.
I'm in an open content marriage, and also, on the app formerly known as Twitter. That's another place where you can see the words as well. So yeah, no, thanks for having me, guys. I love this annual tradition that we have created with 10 minutes of pizza talk before we start. And I always like that as well.
We can finish the actual show with whatever food or culture takes you might have mid-April 2024. But
if you want my chicken finger review, no.
Do you have like very specific chicken finger reviews?
I guess I do.
Okay, that's a tease.
There is a certain kind that I do like, but it's going to take a minute to figure out how I describe it because it's not just one place. It's like a way that people make it. So
okay, we will circle back. Corporate term, Ty. We will circle back to that at the end, and we'll start out with this. What has come to, in your mind, define this year's NFL draft? The reason you're here, the reason for the season. Is it depth at quarterback? Is it unknowns? Is it new coaches? Is it some other position group? Is it, the bottom of the first half is a mystery? Bottom of the first round, excuse me. What is the sort of the overarching excitement for you about this year?
I would just say even depth of offense in the first round. I shouldn't even just say depth. I should say high-end talent with depth. It's what you want. I think there's a consensus of what the premium positions are in football, which is a whole nother discussion because now there's more premium positions than non-premium positions, which is, I think it kind of defeats the purpose. If you're calling more things premium than non-premium, kind of, is that premium anymore? But offensive linemen, receivers, and quarterback, and those positions, and the NFL has faced the lowest scoring trough, in a couple decades. Defenses caught up the last 2 years. Really nice to get an injection of talent. Really nice. Yeah. I think we're going to get receivers every year, but last year's class was not very good as far as at the top. Jackson Smith-Njigba didn't go till pick 20, I believe. And he's a certain type. Like he might be receiver 5, 6, or even 7 in this year's class. Wow. And not only is there guys in the first round that can go at receiver, there's probably 3 for sure. And I would even say almost guaranteed to go in the top 10 or top 12 in Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Roman Dunze. And I like them all. I like all 3 of them. It's kind of people are going way out of their way to like knock other guys, and all 3 can be really good at the same time. Like there's more than one good actor. There's more than one good movie out there. Like multiple things can be good. But then there's other guys. Brian Thomas from LSU. There is A.D. Mitchell from Texas, who has been interesting. We can talk about him in a sec. But there's just so many flavors. There's so much. There's different types too. There's size. There's slot guys. There's guys that can do a little bit of everything. But then just looking, that's just receivers, which is going to grab headlines. There's the quarterbacks, which is going to grab more headlines because it might go first 4 picks might be quarterbacks. For sure, the top 2 and probably for sure the top 3 will be quarterbacks, whether Caleb Williams at 1, Drake May, Jane Daniels, and J.J. McCarthy. Others might sneak in. There's been some whispers about Michael Penix with the Raiders. There's Bo Nix has some fans. But that's 6 legitimate quarterbacks that are going to go in the first 2 rounds, 2.5 rounds. And a lot of them have a chance to start. This isn't just names and random guys going out there, that's saying something. That's an influx of talent. But the last one, and this is one that grabs my headlines, is offensive line. There might be 10 offensive linemen that go in the first round. And I kept saying this for months, and everyone's like, ha, ha, ha. And then the betting sites come out, and the line is set at 9.5. With the over being juiced up, meaning it's like minus 185. So probably going to be 10, which would set the record. And it's high-end offensive tackles, Joe Alt from Notre Dame, Olu Fashanu from Penn State, J.C. Latham from Alabama. All 3 guys I consider top 10 talents. And then you got Troy Fatanu from Washington, who could play, I think, all 5 spots. I like him at left tackle, but he could play another Vegas guy as well. But there's others. Graham Barton from Duke. There's Talise Fulaga from Oregon State. There's Graham Barton. I already said Graham Barton. Dude, I want to mention him twice because he's so awesome. I really like him.
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah. No, who else do I got? Oh, Marius Mims from Georgia, who's an intriguing project. So that is what's grabbed my interest because it's really hard to find offensive linemen. And offensive linemen, once they're with one team and they're good, they usually don't move teams. So you have a half dozen, 7, 8 teams that could find guys that they're locked in for 10 years, which I think is really interesting because I think that's the type of talent in this draft.
I want to talk about the first position group you mentioned in that very smart answer. Receivers.
Long answer.
No, it's good. We like long answers because then people are used to hearing our voices and now they get to hear yours. The receiver group is fascinating, and you mentioned how it's a much deeper and seemingly more talented group than it looked like last year. it's a position that is dependent on a lot of variables, right? It's dependent on quarterback. It's dependent on opposition. It's dependent on, a pass rush getting home perhaps a little bit too soon, so your route can't fully develop. So which of these receivers do you feel like you have the best handle on in terms of ability and experience and capability? And which is like your fascination with like, look, the speed is there, the route running is there, but because of what he wasn't able to show last year or competition, whatever it was, that you are still projecting more than you are accepting?
Oh, okay. I would say easy Marvin Harrison Jr. There's been a little bit of a prospect fatigue with him, but he's special, like truly, truly special, just as far as how clean he is, route running, hands. Body usage, strength, size, speed. I know he didn't run the 40, which I think is one of those things all these guys talk about. They watch the tape and watch all 22, and then they go, I need to see him run the 40. It's like, why? He's running past everybody, and he's doing it really well. Like they're not just running short routes with him. He's easy to get a handle on just because his game projects really well. That even if you did have questions about his speed, his polish is so advanced. It's you seldom see this. Like the only other receiver recently that had this amount of polish was Devontae Smith. Marvin Harrison is 3 inches taller and 30, 40 pounds heavier.
Right.
That's exciting. That's really cool. It's him. He's just the easy answer. If I wanted to get another answer, not really. This is my receiver too, so I'm not really going too crazy here, and that's Roman Dunze, because he just has such a clean game, and again projects really well. A very professional game. He had to run a real route tree at Washington, who I loved their offense. I think everyone did, but had to do everything. Had to line inside, had to line up outside, had to ball win and dunk on guys, had to run routes, had to do screen stuff, had to do some of the dirty work and block. I've compared him a lot to like kind of a supercharged Chris Godwin from Tampa Bay. He played at Penn State, similar size and willing to do the dirty work, but also has the flashiness to them. So that I am really, really big fan of his game. As far as one that I'm projecting perhaps more than what I saw, it would be A.D. Mitchell from Texas. There's just a lot of inconsistencies with his game. And that usually with receivers, I'm turned off by that. As soon as I see him wonky on a route, maybe look like they're guessing on something, I'm like, all right, it only gets harder in the NFL with a deep playbook and asked to do even more. But then do you watch him run? And do you watch him and then you watch him double jump in the end zone? And so I'm bullish on him, but I'm scared at the same time. He's the type of player I usually really like. He's big, he's long, he's a good route runner too. I thought he moves really well for his size and all those things, but he's just so inconsistent. And in the NFL, it's all about consistency. That's what it is. It's not the highs and lows. It's what you can do every week. So he's a little scary for me, even if I still see him going in the first round.
Is there a receiver, and it's sort of the flip of this, right? That Marvin Harrison Jr. has it all together, right? He has the polish, he has the size, he is the no-brainer of this class. But I don't follow the NFL super closely, but a receiver I know that had a tremendous amount of success was drafted, I think, in the 4th or 5th round in Puka Nacua. And if memory serves, his success was a lot of it based on immediate understanding of a playbook and like a terrific route runner, right? That like whatever he lacks in like the toolsy numbers, he is in and out of breaks quickly. He has like a great field sense, stuff like that. Is there a deeper guy in this receiver class, if what you're saying is right, that it's a really impressive class, that you're like, look, the numbers aren't going to pop, but like he always finds grass, and that's going to be super valuable as like a slot guy this year, next year, because he has that nose.
And this is a guy, and this is what's hard. It's going against the consensus here. I have this guy graded very high, just outside the first round, really. Second round grade, it's splitting hairs, but really that's what it is. But the consensus is a little lower in him, and that's Roman Dunze's teammate from Washington, Jalen Polk. I love him. But the thing is, Puka set the receiving record this year. Polk is never going to be a 1 in an offense. I don't think he's never going to be catching 1,400 yards in a year, maybe not even 1,200 yards, maybe touching 1,000 in the right offense. But he does everything so well. Everything I just said about Dunze, Polk is the Diet Coke version of that. He wides inside, lines outside, plays faster than he timed, even though he timed okay. It was like a 4.5. But smart, knows how to get open, which is underrated. He can beat man well, which you have to do in the NFL. But I think it's more important that you can show that you can beat zone, because so many teams are running zone now in the NFL. He just has that feel. Like, he's a nice safety net type of guy where it's like, all right, in this zone run, I have to uncover this way and find grass. Like you just said, he does that really well. He's okay with the ball in his hands. I even thought, like, Puka is such a simple runner, but he's so strong that his balance is so strong. He just bounces off guys. Polk kind of has that as well. But he would be the one. I mean, shoot, his name is getting blasted up now. I think Peter Schrager just had him in the first round. So now I sound like a hack. But this is a guy I've had rise on, but it's just one of these guys. I'm like, I know he's not the number one guy, but this guy, everyone needs multiple pass catchers in the NFL. You have to. He is a good high end number 2, like a Robert Woods, another Rams receiver that Puka kind of replaced. But that's how I kind of picture him. So I see him as a second round talent. Others are a little lower on that, but not crazy, more of like a third round guy. But I really, really like him.
Well, speaking of number one guys, sweet setup Iceman, let's talk about Caleb Williams, who is going to be the top pick in this draft unless the world collapses on itself before the draft. Going to be the starting quarterback for the Bears next season. Obviously, this is not an NFL show. This is why we bring you on. But we don't live in a vacuum here. The Bears have not been a good organization. They just have not been good. They just traded Justin Fields, in part because of, I guess, his tendency to play hero ball. And now they're going to draft a guy in Caleb Williams whose biggest knock may be the fact that he also loves to play hero ball. So I guess my question is, how confident are you in Caleb Williams being better than Justin Fields in this organization?
I was super high on Fields coming out of that draft. I had him as my number 2 guy after Trevor Lawrence. I still think Trevor was so clean that I still am shocked anyone had someone over him, but that's a discussion for another day. And kind of became realistic watching him that him, Russell Wilson, Jalen Hurts, Daniel Jones are all kind of from the same archetype. They don't really work the ball over the middle. They like to push the ball on the outside, and they like to run. That's kind of how they win. That's a hard way to win. That's like a basketball player not shooting a 3. It's like, all right, well, you better get to the rack. You better dunk on guys, like, because they're going to defend you in certain different ways. When I watched Caleb and then watching him throughout the season, at first I was kind of having those same worries. A little too much hero ball. You're not really working that throw over the middle and trying to find the tight spaces. And I'm glad I didn't get outlandish on that. Drake May is still my number 1 guy for disclaimers purposes, but I still have Caleb as 1B. And I still think of both of them as special. Why I think Caleb and why he is special and why he grew on me was the in-structure stuff is so good and so clean. He just wasn't able to get to that because USC's offense was so bad. The offensive line was so bad. The receivers couldn't get open consistently. They're running wrong routes all the time. Lincoln Riley, who I did have a lot of respect for, but it's now kind of going, what are you doing down there? I'm watching this offense, and they're running all these long developing plays with an offensive line that can't block. So Caleb's in all this space having to do that. And so I was really glad it's my job. So, but I watched them on all 22 and watched 8 games of them. And once you watch it and let it wash over you, you see it like, oh, you had to get into that creation mode. You had to do this because the left guard got beat right away. So it looks a little chaotic on the TV screen, but when we watch it pulled back, you see that he had to access that creativity because everything else was falling apart. Having said that, there are times once in a while he will pass down a throw, but watching him operate in the pocket, watching his drop back footwork, watching the rhythm he throws with, I think his accuracy has gotten underrated. I would put it at excellent accuracy, like way high grade for me. And the comparison that I ended up drawing to him was Drew Brees coming out of Purdue.
Wow.
And if Drew Brees in 2017 is way different than Drew Brees in 2000,
right?
Where he was running around. He was a dude. He still was a dude in the pros, but he was like an athlete. He's chucking stuff. He's making creation plays. And I tweeted this, but there's a lot of comparisons. They're the same size, like almost literally the same size. They are probably similar athletes. Brees is a much better athlete than people remember. And Caleb isn't an overwhelming speed guy, but he's more, his balance and contact balance is excellent and all that. So I know this is kind of a longer answer, but he does the real quote unquote quarterback stuff way better than Fields did and has shown as a professional. And that was something I even underrated until I truly studied him. And then it made me go, wow, the fact that he can do the creation stuff has underrated that real quarterback operation that he could do. And that's why I'm still high on him and think it was the right move to move on from Fields, even if I still like Fields.
So with all that said, you still have Drake May higher.
Yes.
And
yes.
if memory serves, when we did the show a year ago, we had a conversation about Drake May's prospects moving forward. And I think you might have made the comment to us that if he were in last year's draft, he might have been the first quarterback off the board. You were that high on him then. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to now, obviously a lot of talk about Caleb Williams. We've got narratives abound about JJ McCarthy, which we can get into momentarily. Where do people stand on Michael Penix? There is certainly a lot of intrigue. We'll try to cover as much of that as we can here. But on the topic of Drake May, if you look back at his season in 2023, now having more information, do you feel better or worse about Drake May as a prospect? I'm guessing I know the answer to this. You kind of tipped that off, but
I know I tipped it.
Yeah. How has your thinking evolved around Drake May?
I still feel really good about him. I actually, I liked him more because of what they put on his plate. It's been funny for me that people have brought up the NC State game, the Clemson games. I think Virginia was another one. And I go and watch those, and there's a lot of positives to draw from what May had to do. One, did anyone watch North Carolina this year? I'm guessing not, because it was awful.
It was rough. It was really, really
offense,
rough. Yeah.
Awful personnel. Like, it's not good. It's just not good. So watching him going through those games, in the NFL, you're going to be more even at week in, week out, or at disadvantage. You're going to have guys hurt. You're going to have a rookie playing against an all-pro. It's just how it's going to go. So that's what made me more excited watching him. That's like, he's putting the team on his back every play and having to operate, but also the mental side, I think they added to him. And that's what was encouraging for me. They didn't try and make it simple as far as pre-snap operation, even if it was a simple offense. They gave him full controls for protections. And this is just me watching it. I didn't ask anybody. I could just kind of see how the operation goes, because there's no looking at the sideline like you see in college and any of those types of things. That's good. That's a really good sign that a redshirt sophomore is getting full control pre-snap. Not a lot of guys get that. So that's made me excited. The one thing I had a negative with him last year, or going into last year, was he would do the Madden drop a little too much, which is working back in the pocket, trying to find a throw. And it took some bad sacks. He got a little better in 2022. I would say he improved on that a lot in 2023. Still has room to go and room to grow in there and get better in that. And I think there's been some people that have over-harped and have kind of really knocked him for some of how he moves in the pocket. That's what they do in that offense. You can't grade him off West Coast footwork timing if he's not in a West Coast Bill Walsh offense. And I feel like I go insane like trying to explain that to people. It's like you're grading the traits and then what he can project to do. I love him. I really do. I've kind of have high praise on him. I view Caleb and him as 1A, 1B, or May as 1A, Caleb as 1B. And I would put them up there with Trevor as my highest graded quarterbacks I've watched since 2014 for different ways. But as far as size, athleticism, creativity, aggressiveness, and I think the smarts that he indicates, and from what I've heard through the grapevine, just the off-field stuff is awesome too. Yeah, I'm still all in on it. I've actually been shocked people have fallen off. I'm like, really? You're okay.
It doesn't feel like people have mentioned him enough.
At all. And that's my theory, is that we're getting into the bad pickup artists negging.
Yeah.
Right.
Where they're like, yeah. We don't, but really that's their guy.
Yeah.
And because that's what happened to Stroud last year, and he ends up going 2. No one talked about Stroud. The only thing we heard about Stroud for 2 months was S2 testing. And it was like, and I remember just being like, really? You guys hate him this much? I think he's pretty great. And it kind of gaslights you a little bit. And I feel like the John Travolta meme in Pulp Fiction, where I'm like, like, really? Like, this, I'm the only one? Like, no, I'm not the only one. There's others that like him. But I think these two, Caleb and May, I think they're a tier above the other guys, pretty easily so. But I just think they're have all pro caliber traits. Obviously it's all threat. I mean, it's all bets you're making. So, but these guys I look at a star starter bench bust for prospects. These guys have a big star chunk. I'm not saying 100%, I'm saying like 20%, but I think they also have bigger starter chunks, 60%, and less bust chunks than people are making them out to be. That's where I think there's some disconnect for me.
So I have to ask this question, Nate. And for folks who listen to this show, I've sort of been teasing this for a while. I am a Giants fan, full disclosure. For the last 3 months, I want to say, Dan, just amongst friends, not so much on the podcast, I have basically been the president of the Jayden Daniels fan club. In the way that you love Drake May, I sort of love Jayden Daniels. So believe me when I tell you this, Nate, I saw a recent comment of yours comparing him to Daniel Jones, and it knocked me off my chair.
I'm sorry.
An audible groan, my wife yelled to me, "Is everything okay down there?"
Yeah.
Not really. Not really. What am I supposed to do with that information? Is that to say that the ceiling for Jayden Daniels is Daniel Jones? Is it just a rough point of comparison? How do you see Jayden Daniels evolving in the NFL once he gets there? What does his ceiling look like to you?
Yeah, it's a rough point of comparison. It's
okay. Thank you.
Even the Caleb discussion, where I just mentioned the guys that were Justin Fields, the archetype that he plays like the Russells, Jalen Hurts, and Daniel Jones. That's Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels has the same statistical profile, playing style as those guys. Different ways, of course. Jalen Hurts wants to bowl a guy over. Russell Wilson wants to run around a bunch. Jayden Daniels wants to run sprint right by. Daniel Jones does whatever he does. But these guys they struggle to throw with timing over the middle and anticipate over the middle. And again, you can win that way, but you have to be exceptional in other areas. And this is where some of my concerns with Daniels is, where my high-end comp, which I think is fairly realistic, is that he's a fast Teddy Bridgewater. And I mean that as a compliment because of his accuracy, because I think of his understanding of the offense. I also think of because, he also has wheels and some decent pocket movement as well and understanding, but also the size. They have similar size, similar builds, which I'll talk about too as a negative in a sec. But with Daniels, why I consider him, I have him, I think, 20th on my big board. And I feel it, but quarterbacks get inflated. So if I have him 20th on my big board and he goes top 10, that's how it goes. That's the NFL and that's football. But for me, when I'm watching him, is just there are concerns with not only just that he was more of a late bloomer. Even if I did like him at Arizona State more than others, it was kind of like I forgot about him, but I was like, he's a day 3 guy. I'm accepting. Last year he blows up, good offense and everything. Guys blow up all the time like that. But how he wins is a lot of one and done kind of reads. And I'm not saying that because he's not intelligent. I'm saying it's because that's how he wants to play. One, I'm not moving in the pocket to throw. Like May and Williams, they move in the pocket to find a throw. Daniels moves in the pocket to run. That is fine. This is where the weight comes in. And this is where a lack of creativity comes in. If you're going to be a one and done read guy or make it kind of a simple thrower and a simple runner, he's just not creative. That's where the Lamar comparisons are crazy to me. Right. Lamar doesn't take hits. Lamar jukes guys. Lamar gets out of bounds. Lamar's comparison is Wayne freaking Gretzky. Like that's his comparison. Daniels, though, doesn't have that. He takes shots. He kind of, when he gets moved off his spot, he looks to scramble more often than not. He's looking to run. And again, in college, that's great. NFL, that's just hard to win. You could do it, but it's just hard. And this is where his size comes in. If he's sub 210, which I think he's more sub 200 than 210, what he weighed at the combine, there's not a lot of guys that not only just succeeded, but even started full seasons at sub 205. So let's say he weighs 205. There's only 2 guys since the year 2000 that have had successful seasons at quarterback, Kirk Cousins and Jeff Garcia. So you're betting on a size outlier with red alerts about throwing over the middle, with red alerts about scrambling over too much. And I still like him. It's just that those weigh in my head because this is the same stuff that Fields went through. It's hard. Guys don't get better throwing over the middle in the NFL. They just don't. They get worse. So that's why if you don't do this already, I get a little scared about it. And he has that for me.
There's an interesting dividing line between those top 3 quarterbacks and the next 3 quarterbacks in that LSU, USC, and North Carolina had elements of their teams last year that were catastrophically bad. You mentioned what it was with North Carolina, obviously USC's defense and LSU's defense. So those quarterbacks, and I remember hearing, I think it was Dan Orlovsky talk about it with Caleb Williams, it was like he was asked to do everything. And so when he felt like he needed to score 50 a game to win a game for USC, that changes the natural rhythm of playing the position. You go to the next 3, J.J. McCarthy has an incredible defense, has a very good offensive line, a team built around the run, so he is not asked to score 45 points through the air for his team. Same goes for Bo Nix on a balance, good team, good receivers, good offensive line, very strong running game. And same goes for Michael Penix. That nothing was catastrophically bad, but he was advantaged and he had the receivers, he had the line, and the defense was fine. But he didn't need to score 50, 60 points a game. Is that part of your evaluation? Is that something that you have to adjust for as you were thinking about quarterbacks and that they couldn't always play within a desired rhythm? And do you knock it for somebody like Bo Nix, who had all the time in the world, had open receivers? How do you evaluate situationally in college?
No, that's a great question. I think that's what everyone struggles to do. I think for me, I think there's a fallacy that people, I don't even know if I'm saying that right, that people fall into, that they have to watch every play and translate every play. I think it's not 70 plays or 60 plays I'm watching of a quarterback throw the ball in a game, or say 40 plays that he's throwing the ball or running the ball. Say 12 translate to the NFL. Yeah. For me, it's harping on what happened on those 12 that I truly can translate to the NFL. I have, of course, because of my background, I have some leg ups that I can go like, okay, they're trying to accomplish this, or okay, this is why you have to do that. But also, you get into the can't or won't situation sometimes with play calling. Are they calling that play because he can't do it, or they just won't do it? Like the coaches won't call it. Some college coaches, and I'll knock them as I'm sure it's so much fun to do.
Yeah.
Trust me, I love doing it too.
Yeah.
I watch them. They're not all complete idiots. And sometimes when people will call a play and go like, well, they just keep calling the same play. And it's like, well, maybe that's all the quarterback can handle. Or maybe that's why this guy can handle, and that's why they call that. But then sometimes I know something about a coach. I go, oh, no, that coach is an idiot. Yeah, you're right. Right. It'll be much better. So that's why it is hard to translate. It's the process of everything. So much of football is process based. I think a lot of life is. And a lot of people will look at results. I even see highlights of guys where like, look at this throw. And he's throwing to a wide open guy on a hole shot in a clean pocket. And it's like, yeah, that's a cool throw, but it's like, that's not what I'm looking at when I'm grading a guy or translating a guy. So, okay, if this guy, Jayden Daniels, some of the throws I've seen highlighted as one of his good throws, I consider it a negative because he was taking 2 extra hitches before he threw it. And that it's just all how you translate it. So I know this is not like a clean answer on this, but it's just how the process that they got to that point. Does that work? Like, does that make sense? So I don't always want to knock Daniels because he throws it to Brian Thomas and freaking Malik Neighbors. That's not his fault.
Right.
But if he's throwing that stop route to Brian Thomas, where did he put the ball? Yes, Brian Thomas is going to make things easier, but was the process to get it there pretty good? Was the footwork good? Was the ball placement pretty good? Was the timing good? All the process to that point. Because, there's been Joe Burrow highlights shared for years, and it's just him throwing up to guys who are dunking on him. It's like, and I'm not trying to be mean here. It's like, I could do that. The cool Burrow plays are like the 12-yard gains, the 14-yard plays, the 8-yard gains where he's doing all the mental stuff and the accuracy and stuff.
Right. Your ninth best throws, right?
Yes. And
that's
most
what exciting plays. Yeah.
Exactly. So a lot of the highlights kind of get overrated, which is it's highlights. I get that. So there's so much more in the minutia that I think that I try to translate to when I'm grading these guys. So sometimes, yes, you have to keep the situation in there and everything, but also it's just leading up to when those other guys take over. I will say the pocket stuff is real. Like that is a guy like Penix at Washington who had a perfect pocket like every snap. That is where I get some worries because then it's like, okay, there's only 5 plays that feel more like an NFL pocket. So it's just the denominator changes based on these situations.
How do you evaluate Bo Nix and JJ McCarthy under that same rubric in terms of pockets, in terms of like their 9th best highlight throws per game? What is it that separates those 3 from those first 3? Well,
with McCarthy, it's like the 9th best throw. It took me about 10 games to get to
exactly.
Because that's all he got to. But that's what I think. And Dane Brugler, who I do the show with, Prospects to Pros, he's the athletics draft expert. He's awesome. He kind of said this throughout the year. He's like, people are going to love McCarthy. He's like, coaches are going to love him. They're going to love him. And I was like, yeah, I know, but I don't know, man. They're like barely throwing with him. And I'm watching all these games. I'm like, all right, there's one good throw there. Dan was usually right, and he was right here. He grows on you when you watch him because he might throw only 8 throws. All 8 translate. All the 8 operations translate to the NFL, I should say. Mm-hmm. McCarthy him and Daniels he has the same size concerns for me as Daniels does, but he's younger, so we can get into that. But he's almost the opposite of Daniels. he is willing to whip that ball over the middle. He's willing to throw the ball on the move. He's a good thrower on the move. Can't go left, though. He's got a Zoolander thing to him.
Okay.
He can't scramble left, and he can't throw left. It's weird. It's weird. He's got some mechanical stuff where he tries to overstride, but it's even when he tries to break contain from the pocket, he always goes right. It's Jalen Hurts is the same way too, but so it's kind of funny. But watching that, if you told me in January that I'd have McCarthy and Daniels close, I'd have laughed. But as this process has gone on, I watched more and more. They kind of got closer and closer on my big board. I still have Daniels as QB3, but McCarthy's game just kind of, it can project it a little bit more. I do think people are going a little crazy with him and going like, he's the mystery box. So you can kind of just fill him however you want to fill him in. I'm trying to be very realistic that I see his game, his upside, I think his high end upside is like Kirk Cousins that can move a little bit, but pretty good. But Kirk went the 4th for a reason and not top 5. And so that's where I struggle. I understand taking him on a good team at pick 20 or pick 18, pick 16, something like that. Top 5 for me is a little rich to take him because of the size stuff, because of what he's asked to do, because of the lack of experience and all those types of things. Nix I struggle with because I appreciate the accuracy and I appreciate he knows what to do. I thought Oregon had some big training wheels for him on offense this year. As far as he's good at these 3 things, we're not asking him to do anything else.
Okay.
And which is good and bad. But he's a 5th-year guy with a lot of starts, and they're making him do that. That's a little bit of a warning sign for me. Like, okay, well, they're not letting you push the ball much, even though he has a good arm. They're making him kind of be a nickel and dime guy. I view him as like a round 3 guy. I've kind of compared him like a high-end Taylor Heineke. Where I think of him as a real good backup that maybe has a chance to be a solid starter in the right situation. But I have hesitancies with him because of just some of the lack of pushing the ball. He's another guy that doesn't throw over the middle, those types of things.
Fair enough.
Was there another guy you threw in there?
Penix. So you mentioned Penix with the clean pocket, obviously has made some wow throws. Penix has been sort of all over the place, both for things on the field and injury history. Where do you land on him as he's sort of could be anywhere between a 1st and 3rd rounder?
And some people really love him, and I again view him as a round 3 guy. So him and Nix are kind of like lockstep for me, which is kind of funny. I feel like they just been paired together for 2 years now. Yeah. I even was on a different pod and I started calling them picks. And I didn't mean it. Like it was just inadvertently just started calling them picks. And I was like, gosh, I didn't mean to do that. But here we are. Penix for me, my comparison has started to get into like a smaller Byron Leftwich. And I mean that good and bad. He'll push the ball. He's aggressive. I love that. I love quarterbacks that are aggressive. That's why I love Drake May. I think that's the winning formula. And then you try to bring it back in and calm him down a little bit. Penix to me, though, he has some accuracy stuff I don't like. He never works over the middle as far as doesn't want to. Like he doesn't want to throw at timing. He wants to throw over the top, or he has to see it a little bit. So he ends up always just a hair late on throws. Again, that's concerning with so many starts and so many plays and such good receivers and offense and all that. He doesn't create at all. And I know he ran a good 40. You'd never see it, like ever. If he gets any sign of pressure, he throws that ball away. And if this was 20 years ago, I'd be like, yeah, I like that. Can't do that. NFL quarterbacks, you have to be you have to be maestros. You have to be able to operate in the pocket and do stuff outside the pocket. So that's already concerning to me. You have accuracy issues and you don't create. All right. And then that's before getting into medicals, age, and all those types of things. I also think this is where the Leftwich comparisons come in. They're different sizes and everything, but he needs a big platform to throw. He's kind of a long strider that takes some of that. So I just have red alerts with all those types of things because I need to see a little creation. If I'm going to put you in there, like you got to do a little bit more because you're not going to get those pockets. You're not going to play with those receivers. You're not going to have that offensive coordinator and that offensive line coach either. So I just have a lot of concerns with him. His is the situation that stuck out most to me as helping him more than the others, more than even Daniels at times.
Wow. Is there a player? Obviously, tweeners are super fascinating, and for some positions, along the offensive line, you could be between a tackle and a guard or something. But we have a league in the NFL that either finds coaches who can find players and get the absolute most out of them in unique roles. You're Debo Samuel with the Niners or Derwin James with the Chargers, right? They're playing hybrid positions. Is there a hybrid guy that you have been seduced by And with the sort of caveat of saying, like, if he ends up at the right place and they can unlock this specific strength of his and sort of create something or insert him into this position, they're going to thrive. If they don't, they might be Isaiah Simmons. They might be Tavon Austin, something like that. Who is like on that balance for you?
Oh, man. So a less sexy one would be Brandon Dorlus from Oregon.
Yeah.
Defensive lineman. And I just say defensive lineman because I'm not sure what spot he's best at. And I think that's good and bad. But I think if he goes to the right spot with a creative defensive coordinator, which I think more in the league are now, the coordinator situation, play calling situation, I think, in my assessment, is decent right now in the league. It's not as confounding. I know as the season goes along, it becomes confounding once quarterbacks get hurt and everything, but it's like the baseline's not bad. So Dorlus to me is, I think his versatility or his tweenerness, there's the positive or the negative.
Right, exactly.
How you want to describe it. I would call it versatility is a good thing because he can line up inside a little bit outside. But him, I'm very bullish on because I like that because there's more defenders like this that are working right now in the NFL. And just again, like I said, more creative defensive coordinators. I mean, shoot, the obvious one, and this is because I don't consider him a tight end. I truly, and I hate this term, that's why I use it, but I mean as a compliment, his offensive weapon is Brock Bowers. Because Bowers is, yes, he's a tight end. Lined up in the slot. I can look back to 2019 in True Media for stats. Bowers lined up in the slot the second most times of any tight end in FBS, on FBS record. He is a power slot. He is more like Cooper Kupp than he is like Kyle Pitts or George Kittle or anything like that. And so to him, I think he's a special talent, but he also, it's an oxymoron. To me, usually special talents are situation proof and scheme proof, but Bowers is a special talent where it's like, I want to see him in certain spots though. I don't want to see him with the Jets. And that actually seems like it's going to happen. So hint, hint, wink, wink. But I want to see him with the Rams. I want to see him. I want to even see him with Sean Payton. I want to see him with the Colts with Shane Steichen because he's great with tight ends. But like to me, Brock Bowers used like Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp, where they're blockers, they're kind of tight ends, they're kind of receivers, they kind of do all this motion stuff. Brock Bowers does all that jet sweep stuff too. Like
they're used as like mismatch hunters.
Like Puka, that's what Puka is. Puka is they're adjusters. Like a typical football formation is 21 personnel, which is a fullback, running back, 2 receivers, and a tight end. The adjuster is the fullback there. So if you go 12 personnel, that's the second tight end. If I go 11 personnel with 3 receivers, that's the slot receiver. What the Rams do, and this is what more teams are doing, they're just finding guys that are adjusters, not just slot, not just tight end. You are the F no matter what. It's the weirdest thing of football. The adjuster is labeled F. Still don't know why, but flex, I don't know why, but it is, and I just take it and run with it. So more teams, and the good coaches are the Lions with Ben Johnson, Packers with LaFleur, Kyle Shanahan with the 49ers, McVay with the Rams. What these guys are doing are going like, we'll just stay in the same personnel and we'll just move these 1 or 2 guys around and mess you up every snap. It's awesome. Bowers in the right situation, it could be an ultimate weapon that can unlock so much. But I like him with those teams than, again, like the Jets or the Giants, I'm sorry, or something
oh,
like
Ty
that.
knows.
Oh, I know. It's fine.
Oh, yeah. The Giants love their slot receivers. So Bowers would fit right in.
Yeah, terrific. So we solicited the Verballerhood for some questions, Nate. And I'm actually going to mix this one with one of my own. Okay. Just because we've done it every year, I like asking you who your can't miss guys are, the guys that you look at and you say, for sure that player is going to be a star. I'm also going to, I guess, merge that with a question that we got from Ryan out on our Patreon, who just wants to know broadly, who is your favorite player in the draft? Not necessarily the best, but who is the guy that you are rooting most for? I suppose that could be the same guy. Maybe it's Drake May. I don't know, but
it probably is them.
Yeah. Is it Drake May?
It probably is Drake May. It is. May or Caleb Williams. Like, after you watch so many bad quarterbacks and you watch so many bad prospects, and when you watch guys like this, it's fun. And I'm trying not to be so like crazy verbose about it, but it's like, I'm excited to watch NFL people watch these guys, like fans, and just go like, oh, this is what you guys were talking about all those years.
Right.
It's like, yeah, it's like that. I'm excited to watch those two. Like those two are truly favorite players and I think best players. But I mean, if we're just getting to just maybe down the board. Roman Dunze, again, I already gushed about him. Get into offensive linemen. I love Graham Barton from Duke. I think him and Trey Fontenot from Washington. Fontenot. I've mixed up his name 3 times now. But those two, I think they're just going to be awesome pros. The big question for them is what spot? And now that used to be such a negative. Now for me, I think that's a positive in football because you need the linemen. Guards are getting paid. Tackles are getting paid, both sides, left and right tackle. You need 5 starters in some way, shape, or form. I think both of those have good or maybe even Pro Bowl potential at 4 spots on the line and could play left tackle in a pinch. I like both of those guys too if we're just going to offensive line. And then I've talked enough about offense. Let's go defense. Mike Hall from Ohio State. Really like him. Kind of a limited snap guy at Ohio State, young, but gap shooter. Heard kind of a weird personality, but not weird doesn't mean bad. I've always learned this.
No, I've stuck with Ty all these years, so it's fine.
Robert's stuck with me. Here we are. But but Mike Hall he's a guy I'm bullish on. I really enjoyed watching him. So that's another one I want to throw in there. It's after that, Cooper DeJean's a lot of fun. Malik Mustafa from Wake Forest. Yeah. He's my safety 1, but a lot of people see him as a day 3 guy, and I'm kind of blown away by that. He's one of those guys that he's shorter. I think he's 5'9", 5'10", but he's big. I've compared him to Buda Baker, and I watch him, and everyone kept kind of knocking him. Oh, I don't think he's going to test well, and then he tests well. Oh, I don't think he's big enough. He weighs 215. It's right. Like everyone's trying to find ways to knock him, and other than just going like he's really good. So that's another guy I'm kind of cheering for because his tape's a lot of fun. I can keep going and going.
Can I ask you a philosophical question? It's not so much around the draft, but it comes to mind often when we talk about how guys are graded out and how they fit into the NFL. How many good quarterbacks are there in the NFL right now?
Like good
quarterbacks. Because I feel like we have this discussion every year when we're talking about the 5 guys
dividing line.
Yeah, the 5 guys off the draft board that get picked, and they could come in and be instant impact, but it feels like from afar on an NFL show again. Like there just aren't that many good quarterbacks, and I wonder if that's true, and if so, why?
It's the baseline is higher, but now it's harder.
Okay.
It's quarterback play is more advanced than ever, but it's harder than ever to play quarterback. So it's kind of a funny thing. During COVID, during 2020, I sat there on YouTube and just watched all 80s and 90s NFL games on YouTube just over and over and over. And I was watching some of these starters in like 1997, and I remember some of this as a kid. But I'm like, we're knocking quarterback play now. I'm watching Mark Sanchez in a playoff game go under center on 3rd down and go. They went 2 fullbacks and 2 tight ends in a playoff game because they didn't trust Mark Sanchez, who was the number 6 pick.
Right.
I'm watching now. We're throwing in freaking Tommy DeVito, and they're running real offense for him. Are we kidding? Yeah. So the baseline's so much higher. But oh my god, the defensive line has never been better. DB play has never been better. Linebacker play, big question mark. I'm blaming you guys in college for that.
Yep.
But D-line plays better. Pass rush has never been better. Safety play has never been better. Defensive play calls have never been better. Blitzes have never been harder. So I think that's what it is. But if you're saying what good, the number changes every year. That's another thing. People go, oh, this is a top 8 quarterback. It's like, well, there might be 12 top 8 quarterbacks.
Right.
Once we kind of grade it. So off just top of my head, 2, 3. We're at 3 so far. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 in the AFC, so half the AFC. But then that's the good conference. Now we get to the NFC. 12.
Silence.
13? 13? 12?
Total.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's about right. And that's stretching them with maybe 1 or 2 guys. So yeah, that's about right.
But by the way,
that's above average or better. Like good, like quality starter or better. So good. Yeah.
Our solid verbal promise to you is we're not going to ask you who the next Brock Purdy is because
thank God.
If you knew, you wouldn't be here.
I didn't include him in that 12.
You didn't?
No, I didn't. So
I like the 49ers. He seems like a good quarterback. I don't know.
He's solid, but get him out of there. I don't know. Like I didn't include Tua in that count either. Okay. Those guys I struggle with because I think they're fine, but I don't know if they're good. Again, this is splitting hairs. This is like holy shit, my Twitter mentions anytime these discussions come up, just turn it to hell. Oh yeah. This is the best thing about the offseason is I get I'm Brock Gnostic. That's what I've gone on. Like I'm staying away from every discussion on it, every argument about it. I have my feelings, keeping them to myself.
Fair. Hey, take a nap instead.
What's the knock on college linebackers?
Well, they have to play a different game, right? They don't take on blocks. It's a lot of run and hit. They also have to worry about RPOs every play. Yeah. So their style of play just on a snap isn't what they have to do in the NFL. They have to cover some RPOs, but it's even different, the RPOs that they have to face in the NFL. They don't have to take on a fullback. They don't have to take on a good blocking tight end reaching up to them in the second level. It's a lot of run and hit, meaning run in space. Everything in college is space. NFL is more tight spaces and having to navigate that. A lot of them are converted safety types, 228, 225, which though you're seeing it trickle up into the NFL, good or bad, where more linebackers are starting at 235, 232, something around there. That's fine. It's just that it used to be linebackers you consider plug and play. I get this guy, boom, he's day one starter. We got him for the next 5 years, 6 years. Now it feels like you have to develop linebackers, it's just a different line of thinking now because of what they have to face in college is drastically different than the NFL.
My final question, and then I know Dan's got something very important he needs to discuss with you before we put a bow on this, but this one comes to us from Thomas out on Patreon. He wants to know, from studying film on this year's draft prospects, are there any college players that you noticed who are actually returning to college, but maybe are flying under the radar? We're not talking about them now because of, it's this year's draft, but guys that are already on your radar for 2025.
Oh, I got guys on my radar from 2026.
Hell yeah.
Freaking Caleb Downs.
Man. Yeah.
The safety.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
So good.
He's ridiculous.
Holy crap. Way to go, Ohio State, getting him. Oh, my God. Peter Woods. This is 2026. Peter Woods, defensive tackle, Clemson. That guy looks like a top 10 pick. I'm going to come on the show. That guy's a first rounder. I'll just say it right now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say top 10 pick already. He's playing with another defensive tackle that might go in top 3 rounds in Rook Aurora, which is the peanut butter in the mouth name. He's better as a true freshman. Like Woods was vastly better. So that's a guy I'm keeping my eye on. Definitely for next year. Luther Burden from Mizzou. Definitely. Gotta go position by position. Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame, the tight end.
Yep.
Who's just a big hoss, like freaking Paul Bunyan that can catch everything.
Big dude.
But yeah, he's the LSU tackle, and I'm blanking on his name because I always mix them up. It's Emory Jones or Will Campbell. I can't remember which one's which, but they're left tackle. I really like him. Some guys that returned to school that I was shocked that they did were some of the Ohio State guys. Jack Sawyer from Ohio State. I'm a big fan of his game. I had him until we decided he was returning to school. I had a first round grade on him. I just really liked his, I shouldn't say first round grade, late first, early second, splitting hairs, but it counts. But his game is awesome. Good pass rusher, does everything well, but also his teammate, Tuamalo, JT. We'll just go with JT. Those two, of course. Abdul Carter from Penn State. He looks like a freak. That's all.
Moving to the edge.
Moving to the edge, which good. He should. Yeah, he should be on the edge. Yeah, he looks like a stud. Dante Corleone from Cincinnati. Just because that's a fun name. I think he's decent. Let's see who else we got. Andrew Makuba from he was Clemson, now Texas.
He just transferred to Texas. Yeah.
And then of course Travis Hunter from Colorado.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Which position?
I think corner.
Okay.
It's just tinier hands. I think some of the drops he had maybe hesitant, but he's a special player.
Yeah.
It's a fun class. Quarterbacks aren't like great at this point in time, but you don't know. I like Riley Leonard, who just went to Notre Dame.
See, Ty?
Oh man.
I like him.
We just don't see eye to eye on anything.
Toolsy.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's tools. Yeah. It is. It's all it is. But the thing is, I like to see him throw the ball further than 5 yards. That's a classic. Is that the offense, or was that them going, we don't trust him to push the ball? So that's what at Notre Dame, he's going to not have any excuses. So I'm excited to see them. This one's going to bite me in the ass, but I'm a Tyler Van Dyke supporter.
Whoa. Whoa.
he was at Miami, and I've always been like, hey, there's something to him.
You see the helmet behind you.
And he's at Wisconsin now. So now I can't hide. Now, if he's not good, I can't just go, I don't talk about him as a prospect. I'm good. No, if he's not good.
He throws a very catchable ball. Unfortunately, multiple teams catch his passes.
I thought you were going to say unfortunately, the fans are the ones that know how catchable that ball is.
Yes.
I like him more than others. Cam Ward was another fun one. Carson Beck, the quarterback at Georgia, is interesting to me. I have no idea who I'm going to put as my QB1 as going into the summer at this point in time, but Beck's in the running for that. Oh, Jalen Daniels, Kansas, duh.
Yeah. If he's healthy, he's had a bad back.
Yeah, when he's healthy, he's freaking awesome. But that's the big thing.
All right, we're putting your Tyler Van Dyke take as an interesting draft prospect into our volcano that we've called Takatoa.
That's fine. That's fine.
And we'll see what happens there. Final question, because you've given us a ton of time, ton of information, a ton of premium, top-tier, elite content. Chicken fingers. Use your evaluation brain. Use your prospect brain. I don't know if it's a take on who does it the strongest or what if you have a rubric when you go to a random sports bar and you are craving a basket. First of all, there's chicken fingers versus chicken tenders. Those are different parts of the chicken, right?
Yeah.
Your finger is a little girthier. Your tender's a little flatter. Is there a sauce preference? Is there a breading preference? Do you want them on a sandwich? Not on a sandwich? Where do you come down when evaluating your fried chicken in a hand?
I do like a little more breading. I don't like the flat. I think that's the start. I'm glad you kind of brought that up. Yeah, I do like them, but I prefer the more crunchier.
It's a cragglier,
I like I also like kind of the mix and match of the crunch. Like sometimes it's like you get more crunch, sometimes you don't. You can kind of mix that up. I like that. I also like a little bit more pepper in my chicken fingers.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of something that gets lost. I think they know that chicken fingers are going for the most, white bread person. Mm-hmm. So, you can still throw some salt and pepper in there. Like, you don't need to go away from that. So I would think really I'm a texture kind of guy. Okay. So I think that's what the big differentiator for me is, that crunch and that certain type of crunching, that certain type of breading. But the thing is, it's so hit and miss. This is not like Applebee's or any of those like Chili's or anything like that. Not that I haven't got one of those in a while.
Of course.
It's usually you get these at like a bar and grill at some random place. This isn't like a chain type of chicken finger that I'm thinking of. It's just a certain type that certain bars have. It's like certain bars have certain type of wings. They're like, oh yeah, that's a good buffalo wing, right?
That's
there.
what I want out of a wing.
Same type of thing with chicken fingers. So it's hard for me to describe, but I will say the breading, the crunch, and the pepper would be the big differentiators for me.
Sweet sauce, creamy sauce, tangy sauce.
I'm more of a spicy sauce kind of guy.
Spicy sauce, okay.
But for me, sauce, I don't want to ever say, because one, everyone acts like any sauce that you say is like you're a child, or that's the stupidest opinion, which is so funny to me. It's like we all have.
Yeah, it's entirely subjective. It's what we like is what we like. Yeah,
that's when people criticize food stuff to me. I'm like, and like, I have a well-versed taste. Like I do a bunch of things. I also like chicken fingers. Yeah, great. Like, I don't know. I think people
Vikings Bro 21 doesn't agree with the sauce I dip in. Guess I have to reevaluate everything.
You're a ranch guy. It's like, yep.
Yeah. So what kind of spicy sauce?
Oh, just straight buffalo. Like I like a classic Frank's Hot, like classic buttery. Great. Kind of buffalo sauce. And then, some people have gotten interesting with some buffalo ranch combos.
Sure.
I like that. So I'm kind of simpler in that regard. I'll do some honey mustard every once in a while. Mm-hmm. But that's more of a one place in Minnesota that I like with their chicken fingers. But Bunnies, shout out to Bunnies. But yeah, that's it. I actually thought the last question was going to be one of my favorite questions I always get of the year. And that's always, you guys go, who's like offenses and defenses did you like? It was
let's go there.
It was just because there was one I just want to talk about. And I think I mentioned him a couple of years ago, but I finally learned the guy's name. And that's because he's now the offense coordinator at Northwestern. But that was South Dakota State's offense coordinator, Zach Lujan. And he's at Northwestern. Love his stuff. I've kept an eye on this guy for a couple of years now. He's kind of a guy.
Did he just get hired, or was he there last year? Just got
hired. Yes. But was at South Dakota State the last couple of years, really young. I think maybe just turned 30. Okay. And yeah, he's a guy I'm keeping my eye on.
What was it again? I know he used like fullbacks creatively. He had all sorts of
everything. Anything you could think of. He does. It's all the good kind of greatest hits type of scheme stuff as far as concepts, but he dresses up really well. Like you're saying, like he has a fullback doing what a receiver would normally do. We're going to do this screen, but we're going to switch some guys around, have some funky action with it. It's creative stuff, much like how Washington was last year, where it's the good sound offensive stuff, but just with some cool window dressing and some tempo and all that type of stuff. But he's a guy I'm just, really, really optimistic about. So
you heard it here first. Northwestern's offense, if they have the guys, they're going to do fun things.
They'll do fun things. I feel like that's what Northwestern should be anyways.
I agree.
Do fun stuff.
When they play next to the lake, Dan.
On a practice field. A temp stand situation,
Catching interceptions from Tyler Van Dyke. That's
exactly right.
Full circle.
I'm going to love it. It's like, get the ball to Northwestern again. Yeah. There you go, Tyler. I want to see it. I want to see what they do on third down. Let's do it.
Excellent. Well, Nate Tice, Yahoo, The Athletic, thank you as always for your time, and enjoy the draft, and may all of your takes be proven correct, and your Twitter mentions be filled with, gotta hand it to Nate. He nailed that one.
It'll never happen. They'll just go, what about Desmond Ridder? But thank you guys so much. This is always a ton of fun.
Real quick, if you like the video, please consider subscribing to the full podcast at solidverbal.com, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. All the links are down below in the description.
All right, there you go. Nate Tice sharing his words of wisdom with us, as he has the last couple years. Not going to lie, the Jayden Daniels thoughts it takes wind out of my sails.
I was hoping for better Bo Nix words myself.
I am not kidding when I say that when I saw his comments on Jayden Daniels, I nearly fell out of my chair. And there was an audible groan, and Solid Wife Kate did say, hey, is everything okay over there? That is how that hit me.
I'm not sure I knew the weight thing with Jayden Daniels.
I'm not sure I knew the over-the-middle thing with any of these guys.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is...
my thoughts on the over-the-middle thing is... I think that can be such a variable thing in terms of like the offenses that are called. And when you have receivers who are so good and getting open so often downfield, I can only speak for myself. Legendary athlete, icon is what some have said, that you're taking big swings. You're bombing down the field. What are you going to do? That's all.
I don't know. It's interesting. It is certainly not short on narrative, especially at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
I find J.J. McCarthy fascinating in this draft. I, of course, am not in a position to do any kind of comps, but that push-pull between did they not trust him or did the offense just not turn him loose is something that's going to unfold probably pretty high in the first round. We'll hear a lot about that. I'm going to be watching. I know you're going to be watching. Hopefully our Ballerhood will be watching as well and can chime in real time. It's fun. It's fun to see where these guys go. We did solicit some listener feedback out there to figure out what should we do with this show? Should we keep doing it? Like, how do you feel about the draft? And I would say overwhelmingly, of course, there were folks who don't care because they're primarily college fans. But by and large, we had a lot of interest in the draft. And it is coming from folks who enjoy college, want to root everybody on at the next level, and are just genuinely curious to hear what people have to say about many of these names that we've come to know very closely over the last however many years, 2, 3, 4 years. So from that standpoint alone, it is one of those interesting points of intersect for us as college football fans.
I get very excited. And again, I mentioned this a couple times during the interview. Like, I just don't watch a lot of NFL because of my Saturday schedule and Sunday morning work schedule with you. Got 2 little kids. Sundays are a day where I'm just out doing stuff.
Yeah, we need to decompress a little bit, right?
Right. And so I'm also still paying attention to college stuff on Sunday when coaches get fired and everything like that. So I get fascinated with the draft, not necessarily in terms of like who's valued where based on like guys that I liked in college, but I always appreciate, and we've said this before, we're 2 very proud swingers, Ty, and I can mean that however you'd like.
Okay.
But I appreciate when somebody who is not considered by the experts to be top 10, top 5, top, first 2, 3 rounds, whatever, that the Vikings, the Jaguars, whoever, like, we love this guy and we refuse to wait for him. And so sometimes you get your, Daniel Jones at pick 5 or 6, and it didn't work out. as far as I can tell from afar, didn't work out.
It didn't. No,
but
it didn't. It didn't.
If you love a player, take him, grab him, trade up, do whatever it takes. And you don't get a lot of sense that, NFL presidents, GMs, or whatever are taking risks that risk their jobs all that often. But when they do, it's pretty cool to see. And I don't remember how everybody evaluated. I'm sure Patrick Mahomes was by and large looked at as like a top 20 pick, and he went, 11? Was it 11? Something like that. I remember being a little bit shocked that he went as high as he did.
Yeah, same.
But I'm not an NFL GM. For a good reason, mind you. It would be a disaster if somebody hired me to do that. So I appreciate when somebody's like, this is our guy. We're not going to say like, oh, let's see if we can get him in a round or two. Or there's always going to be somebody else in the 4th round. No, I don't like that at all. And so value guys how you want. Take some swings. I like that.
Here is my question to you and to the Verballer Hood as a whole.
Please.
And we'll close out on this. I asked Nate. Nate's pretty high on Drake May. Who is the guy, just based on your knowledge of what he did in college? Who is your guy? Who is the guy that you are certain at the next level will be a star? It can be a sleeper.
Right.
It could be one of the names that we discussed here today. But who is that guy for you? Verballer Hood, reach out to us on social media. I'll prompt people. Get your feedback. I want to know, who is your guy? Who is the guy? The one guy of whom you are certain in this NFL draft. Who is that guy for you?
It's a good question. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. seems like just a finished product.
That's a lock. Yeah.
And okay, he's not necessarily my guy because that's the easiest answer, but who am I rooting for? It's probably going to be an Oregon player. I really like Jackson Powers Johnson. So I think he's the consensus number 1 center in the draft. And I remember hearing very early on at his time at Oregon, he was so good that Oregon was thin at defensive tackle. And so he started playing on the defensive line. Mario Cristobal loved him and has obviously a terrific eye for offensive line recruits. Came in, was too good to keep out of the rotation basically immediately. And he seemed likable. He was the one on like those screens against Arizona State who finished through the goal line like he was running through the tape in a track meet. To me, he just seems like somebody who is going to come in and immediately, be a successful center for 13 years in the NFL. And so that's my guy. It's personal. I'm biased about it, but I think that's my answer.
I am hitching my wagon. We talked about the top 3 receivers in this class, and we also mentioned Brian Thomas. I am hitching my wagon to both Keon Coleman and Ladd McConkey. I am all in on those 2 guys. And I think Keon Coleman's probably a higher graded prospect than Ladd McConkey. I don't know how it shakes out, but both those guys have terrific hands.
Yeah.
Keon Coleman, I think, ran a disappointing like 4.6 or something like that. I think Ladd McConkey was better. But both guys obviously had different trajectories in college. Keon Coleman with Michigan State and then with Florida State. Ladd McConkey, I think, was always sort of underrated for the role that he played at Georgia, and that may be the assumption as he moves on into the NFL. But I am fixated on those 2 guys if I am drafting long-term in like a fantasy football league, nothing of real merit.
Right.
I'm very curious to see how they translate to the NFL because I think both have really bright futures ahead of them.
I also am, I think I'm pretty bullish on, I think it's Leatu Latu. From UCLA, transferred down from Washington. A fascinating story with his injury history, and just like he seems like a underthink express conductor, where just like all he does is beat tackles and destroy quarterbacks all the time. And so maybe there are things to nitpick about at his game, but I don't know. I've seen enough of him to know that he's just going to, if he's healthy, destroy people.
The other guy that I'd throw in there, and this kind of speaks to what Nate was saying about guys who know how to run routes and can handle zone coverage. I mean, we talked about quarterbacks with zone coverage, but Anais Smith out of Texas A&M, I think, is one of those guys that can come in and just seems to understand space, understand the offense.
And one of those tweeners that Nate was talking about as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Anais Smith is a really interesting prospect as well. Not going to get quite the same love as a Marvin Harrison Jr., but somebody who I think is a little bit smaller, but can obviously come in and make an impact. What do I know, right? We just watch these guys every Saturday for 4 years. Let us know your thoughts. We're at Solid Verbal on Twitter. Send us a zeet. Let us know your thoughts on Instagram, on Facebook, wherever it is that you've got social media, or just plain old email, solidverbal@gmail.com. Who is your guy?
Who's your guy?
Who are you hitching your wagon to? Let us know.
Are you going to sit and watch the draft Thursday night? How much of it do you sit down in front of the TV? How much are you just scanning apps as you're going about your very exciting life? What is your watch process?
Very exciting life. Thank you. I will watch until we get to like pick 20, and then I'll probably fall asleep.
Okay.
And then I'll wake up and check the apps to see what I missed.
It just takes so long between picks in the first round.
But it has gotten better with the way that they structure it now. Making kind of the main event on Thursday night, I think, is a considerably better viewing experience.
Yeah.
Than it was in the past.
Or is it Detroit this year?
Detroit. Yeah. Looks like they're doing it up. Looks great.
Yeah, these last few years, I play like my old man tennis Thursday nights, and it's probably more valuable for me to sweat off of all the pizza that I eat than to sit down and watch the draft. I actually really like the night and morning between the first and second round, where you're like, oh, this guy wasn't taken. These are the best available. Like, where are they going to go? Are they going to jump right off the board right away? And then when the picks start coming, fast and furious, I love that. That like, oh, they grabbed this guy. Oh man, Cody Schrager was playing D2 football 2 years ago. Like, I love that. That's cool to me, where it starts to become rapid fire.
We will most certainly be getting a call in this end from Uncle Joe about what the Giants did.
Yeah.
And then there will be multiple follow-up calls after the fact. And there will be a conversation at some point late on Sunday.
I thought you guys were Eagles fans now that Saquon moved on over.
I'm not above becoming an Eagles fan.
Okay.
All right. I'm very close to switching allegiance because of that.
Kelly Green is beautiful, if I do say so myself.
I can't see it, but
that's true.
I'm very close. Very close to switching allegiance.
Okay.
And that phone call that I get from Uncle Joe after everything, it'll of course happen in heat of the moment, 6th overall pick if they keep it. But then the call that I get on Sunday, I think is going to dictate a lot.
Yeah.
That kind of overarching view of what the Giants did. That's going to,
I dig it,
be very fateful in terms of, am I sticking with this team or not?
Are you going to record the call? Is Pennsylvania a one-party state?
A two-party? Yeah, I don't know. I should probably look into it.
Pennsylvania, one-party recording.
I'll get verbal consent.
All parties have to consent to the conversation. Pennsylvania makes it a crime to intercept or record a telephone call or conversation unless all parties to the conversation consent.
Okay. I'll just have to get that on tape then, that he consents.
I don't know if there's any sort of RICO reason to record with Uncle Joe. Then maybe you can get a judge to give you that warrant. That'll make it okay.
Put on my lawyer hat.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, fun show as always. We appreciate Nate's time. He gave us a ton of insight. You guys know what to do out there. Of course, check us out, verballers.com. Send in your thoughts. Who is your can't-miss prospect in the 2024 NFL Draft? We, of course, will be watching from our vantage point here as a college football podcast. We also have a second part. A second part related to the draft, but not this draft. A little bit of a tease. We'll talk about that in due course. In the meantime, for myself, Ty Hildenbrandt, for that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, thanks for tuning in, supporting, being part of everything that we do. We'll talk to y'all soon. Stay solid.
Peace.